Kayak gets my flight, hotel, and rental car right, so I can tune out travel advice that's just plain wrong.
Bro, Skycoin. Way better than points.
Never fly during a Scorpio full moon.
Just tell the manager you'll sue. Instant room upgrade.
Stop taking bad travel advice. Start comparing hundreds of sites with Kayak and get your trip right. Kayak. Got that right.
TaxAct knows filing taxes can be confusing, so we have live experts on hand who can help answer any questions you may have. Questions like, can I claim my SUV as my home office if I answer work emails in my car? If I adopted 12 dogs this year, can I list them as dependents? And, am I doing this right or am I doing this very, very wrong? Our experts have the answers to those questions and many others. TaxAct. Let's get them over with.
It's time for the beer radio you've been looking for. This is the show that dispels myths, tackles the toughest topics, and makes no apologies for geeking out on beer. Hosted by two guys that drink before they think. Jamil Zainasheff and John Palmer. This is Brew Strong.
Howdy, hey, my brewing brothers and sisters. I'm Jamil Zainasheff.
I'm TC.
And I'm Huggy Bear, and you're listening to Brew Strong.
Brew Strong. We have our special guest, John Hughes. He's hanging around to answer the questions that you all send in. Jamil gave me a mandate. We are going to answer all of these questions. So, if
every
you like
question
me,
that has ever been in is answered.
If you like me, send me something nice. If you don't like me, send me a zinger. You get to watch me answer it live on Facebook if you tuned in. So, John, if you don't mind, give us the short. John is almost one of our hosts now. He might as well be, but he's really our special guest because of the technology and the science that we've been showcasing in the last few non-Q and non-mail sack shows. John, is that?
Yeah. Hey, everyone. So was the quality assurance manager at Heretic for a number of years. Then the director of the Master Brewer Certificate Program at UC Davis for a few years. And now I'm here doing the Brew Strong with you all, doing some teaching, doing some writing, doing some consulting, and just happy to be here.
We're happy to have you, John. I mean that despite how it sounds, sound like some sarcastic bullshit. I really mean it. No, it's great having John on the show. And, we had a great show. It was almost a year ago now, Jamil, when we had Drew on the show talking about all what he's doing at Blitman and how he's running the show these days. And that's a great show. And they are a great company. And I can't believe they sponsor. I can't believe they still sponsor now that I've been talking on this show. It just blows my mind.
I thought that would have been the end right there. Drew's a great guy, and Blickman Engineering is a great company, and they make such wonderful products that really, JP was always saying, innovate your brew day. This Blickman Engineering will help innovate your brew day and make your brew day easier and more pleasant. When you have stuff that doesn't break, when you have stuff that, works as it should, you're going to have a better time brewing. It's going to make it easier. I still think you can make great beer with, the cheapest of cast off junk, but having quality equipment means that you can focus on all the little things that make great beer instead of worrying about why your wooden tub. I told the story of the wooden tub from Dave Sapsis, where his mash tun was like the bottom of a barrel that probably was used as like a planter, wooden barrel, just cut off. And then he had like some window screen in the bottom. and then a hole in the side and a little bit of copper tubing stuck through there. And that was his mash tun. He could make great beer. I mean, that was it. It was just from junk laying around. Charlie Papazian's original mash tun was 2 plastic buckets with a bunch of holes drilled in the bottom of one, the zap pap, as he called it. So you don't need fancy equipment, but man, it's sure nice to have something decent that doesn't break down on you when you're, dealing with boiling work. So check out Blickman Engineering. Those are quality products, and they got a full range from the more, fewer bells and whistles, the more basics, but still high quality equipment, up to fancy bells and whistles to commercial gear that you can use if you want to start your own brewery. I'd check them out, whatever your needs are. They're good people, and at the worst, you learn something about all the equipment that's out there. So check them out, blickmanengineering.com. Send them an email, feedback@blickmanengineering.com. Tell them how much you appreciate that they pay for this show so you don't have to. All right. What's our first question?
First question. So long-time host, first-time caller, Jamil Zainasheff wanted to know about Huggy Bear's recent bronze in Bach. So Huggy Bear, this one's all you.
Yeah, tell us
thanks
how
for
you
asking.
brewed the award-winning Bach beer there.
Yeah, so I hadn't brewed a Bach before. So when you're coming up with a recipe for a brand new style, a brand new beer, where do you go? So I figured brewing classic styles is a good start. So I opened that up and got the recipe from that. We had just brewed I was about to brew an Oktoberfest. I was like, oh, this would be perfect. I can repitch the yeast and brew a Bach. And I was thinking, we're in Texas, so Shiner Bach's big here. So I was thinking, hey, if we get customers coming in, maybe I could put a Bach on tap, but do traditional 7, closer to the 7%. Bach means strong, so make it strong, unlike the Shiner Bach. Started with that. Some pills, some Munich 1, Munich 2, a little Melanoidin, Munich 3, little roast barley, and a little bit of double roast crystal from Simpson's. And did the Oktoberfest yeast, and turned out someone thought it was pretty good, or a couple people thought it was pretty good. So got a bronze medal for it at GABF. So
you competed with like 5 other breweries.
No.
It was 54 entries in that category this year.
Yeah. And a whole bunch of people had to think it was good because the beers aren't just judged once and they, pick a winner. When there's 4 entries, there's, several sets of judges and, it gets judged multiple times before it gets declared the winner. So,
probably 2 or 3 rounds at least. So.
What would you say was the most important thing in brewing an award-winning Bach?
Fermentation, the yeast and the fermentation, keeping it cool, pitching the right amount, letting it do its thing, not too hot. I think I fermented, what did I do at? I got the brew sheet here. 52, and then let it free rise a little bit to 58 at the end for diacetyl rest. But, just gave it plenty of time. And actually, I haven't quite tapped it yet. We have it in our tank, but I was kind of waiting till about next week or so. So
you lagered it for a period of time.
Yeah, because I brewed this July 16. So yeah, by the time we tap it, it'll be almost 4 months, 3 or 3.5 months or so, I think. So
it's gonna be
plenty of time.
I know you have my address. You probably have Jamil's address. We can get you John's address. We're just saying.
All right, let's see if I can send some out. But yeah, I appreciate it, Jamil. That's a great resource. Anyone is holding back and not buying the book, they should get the book. It's a great resource.
Well, that's very kind of you.
It is. I do love the book, but you have to.
It is the brewer that makes the beer.
Yeah, you were just saying that during our break, Jamil. Yeah, I mean, those are outstanding recipes. I recommend if you are brewing those recipes and you don't like the product, work on your technique more than the recipe, unless you just wanted to go in a different direction. Um, but yeah, congratulations, honey. Very happy for you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, very cool. All right, let's see if we have a short question before the break. Okay, so you might have to remind me of this era, Jamil, because I haven't gone back in the old ones forever. But Eric writes in, "Hi, Moscow. Is there a way to measure the amount of yeast cells in the slurry in a mason jar if we know the volume of sediment without using a microscope? Can we assume 1.5 to 2 billion cells per ml for American yeast like WLP01 and 3 to 3.5 billion cells per ml for German lager yeast?" Eric, thanks you. Or thanks, Moscow. Who was Moscow again? I hadn't heard that in a while. Okay.
Yeah.
No, yeah, I now remember.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is like, decades later.
Gone but not forgotten.
It is over a decade.
I stopped announcing the dates.
Yeah. Only 11 and a half years that took us to get to this question.
But here we are.
Way to measure the amount of yeast cells in slurry in a mason jar if you know the volume of the sediment using a microscope. Well, back when there was the pitching calculator, it would give you some guidance as to, and you could assume certain things.
Mm-hmm.
God, I don't know.
He says he knows the volume of sediment, which is theoretically the percent of sediment. So I don't know how it packs.
Yeah. Generally, I mean, yeast cells do vary considerably in size from one to the other, but
I imagine even in hydration amount at a certain point in time when you're measuring them could vary, no? Not so much. Okay. Stupid question. Sorry.
But there is a way to really, and it works. You essentially dilute down if you go back to one of John's shows where talk about dilution, serial dilution and all that. You can actually, and we talk about counting yeasts. This would have been a good question for them. I'm just saying, Travis was
trying over here. I'm trying.
A good question for that too. You can actually dilute it down, serial dilution, to where, in a standard test tube, just starts to look hazy, and that's a certain concentration. I don't have the numbers in front of me. John, what do you think on this question?
I mean, my first thought was like, I was thinking back to, pulling slurries off the tanks at Heretic and counting, and, it was pretty often in that 1 to 2 billion cells per mil range. That's honestly true for both ale and lager yeast. Yeah. So I'm not sure where they got this 3 to 3.5 billion cells per mil number, but
that seems extreme.
But also, that was always taken from the tank at about the same time, right? Like 5 days post brew. And the longer you let things settle, the more compact it can become. So if you've got a mason jar, I don't know how long you've had this, if you just pulled it off of your conical, or if you poured this out from the bottom of a carboy or something. So it's a relatively safe bet, where as long as you've got like a really good thick slurry that's like the consistency of pudding, then I think you can make that very, very loose estimation. But I wouldn't do that I guess I wouldn't have a whole lot of faith in that, other than just saying like, all right, if we make sure we overpitch based on these numbers in case it's actually lower, then would be good.
So this is where I miss the White Labs vials. Because when you go to your brew shop and they're all 3 months old and they're all packed up tight, most of them are pretty close in level. Roughly about an inchish in that vial. But you can at least walk in and compare it and see. Okay, so 001 is this much full, and they're claiming about that much yeast. And well, your German lager yeast are about this much full, and I've never seen a German lager yeast that was only about a third as full as an 001. They've all been pretty close.
Yeah. That depends on, what their concentration was when they packaged it back in the day. I think their packaging is more precise now than it was back when they were doing the tubes.
I don't think Chris would tell you it's not less. I don't think he'd tell you it's less precise. Everything about what they're doing is more scientific these days than what he was doing earlier on. It seems to be getting just better and better.
Well, and John brings up a good point is, it's very difficult to overpitch. It's easy to underpitch. So, if you just err on the side of, going a little bit more, I think you'd be good. You don't have to be super precise. You just need to make sure you've got enough, and you should be good. Did you want to take a break, or I have a question from the chat?
We should take a break and come back to it.
All right.
That way we can give our esteemed guest in the chat the proper time to give them a great response. Not just your good average response. We're going to give you all the attention you need.
Okay.
To come here for.
We'll take a short break, and when we come back, a question from Ryan right after this.
Back to the beer guys that make other beer guys look like wine guys. Brew Strong.
All right, we're back, and Ryan in the chat has a question.
Here.
First off, Ryan. Sorry. Okay.
Give me a chance to read it.
Sorry.
Ryan says, how did you go about adjusting hops later in the boil where IBUs are less important, or rather less utilized? An example, the amount of saws needed to match previous years is almost double. Obviously, the crop is suffering in other secondary metabolites like terpenes, etc. Is the best approach to continue to match the IBUs via the crop years, alpha acid content, or somehow try and match oil content of the other secondary metabolites that actually impact the flavor? Huggy?
Yeah.
What would you do in this case?
Yeah. I know you could look at your oil content, but there's not really a good correlation. I don't know if there's a great correlation there necessarily with.
Right. How do you deal with, each crop year coming in different for recipes that you brew all the time? How do you adjust your hopping?
Yeah, especially the last couple of years, middle fruit, Hallertau middle fruit has been really low alpha, like 2% or something, when we're used to it at like 4, so it's about half as much. And we did have some recipes where we were using, I had a German Pils at my last brewery that we had four hop additions in it, including a bittering addition, all with middle fruit. And so that bittering addition went way up to get the bitterness level correct. And we're just super loading the kettle with a lot of, to me, it was just too much. It was so much money. We're spending all this money on and it's not a cheap hop. So we ended up doing, we subbed in some bittering hop on that one for the, I think I did about half the bittering charge with a high alpha hop, and then kept some of the middle fruit for the 60-minute as well, just for kind of some flavor carry through. But I've heard of some breweries where if they get a low alpha, they're pushing especially if they get a higher alpha, they're pushing their bittering addition to a shorter time, so they don't get as much bitterness out, but try to keep that same amount of oil or material in the kettle to try to Obviously, your flavor is not going to be exactly the same, but I don't know. Do you think flavor matching with like total oil content would work?
I think that's one way to go about it for sure. A lot of times, you just chalk it up to, well, it's a, agricultural, product that, it's going to change every year. It's going to taste different. It's going to, have different bittering, even, a lot of it is environmentally driven, sun, water, all that. So I would, if you feel like the hops are not, and he was specifically asking about later hops,
which was surprising for the hop you mentioned, right?
No, but I think it's an excellent question. Actually, I think the if you did anything, I would again go with the oils and try and match up the oils and other material in there, try and get close to the same level. But the problem is even if you match that, there could be some flavor differences. Sometimes something has less oil, less terpenes, but it's more punchy. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It has more impact on the beer than, than another, crop that had more oil. So you kind of, that's one of the beauties of a commercial brewery is a lot of times you're brewing the same beer over and over and over, and you can adjust. It's only been a week since you last brewed it. So you can make little tweaks and, deliver a similar thing. Travis, what do you do when you get a different crop of hops in?
So I don't have the restraints that you guys have had of trying to produce the same product religiously for people who love it. And I do play around with hops a lot. If I can get oil content, I'm looking at oil content because I feel like I'm going to get more of what I want out of that hop for flavoring, especially. Bittering, sure, match your IBUs. That's the easy part, right? But I can't always get oil as a home brewer every pound of, and if I buy a pound of Sots, it's going to last me a while, by the way. Right. And every pound of Sots I buy may not tell me how much oil, but yeah, I would go for oil. 15 minutes, I would adjust for oil and then adjust IBUs independently of that because 15-minute will adjust IBUs a little bit.
I think you bring up an excellent point in that the hops are not consistent even across batches. So if you go to hop selection as a brewer and you smell all these different hops and look at the data on all these different hops, you'll realize that one is vastly different than another. I mean, it's not even close. You'd swear they're different hops. Mm-hmm. They can be so different. So, just because it says Saaz, everything that's labeled Saaz and, it's grown as Saaz, one can taste like, horse droppings, and one can taste like, the greatest hop in the world. And it's all, that is just where it was in the field or, what kind of conditions, happened. So that really throws you for a loop too. John, you got anything to add to that?
Nah, I think you guys pretty much covered it. Yeah, I am not full, I don't know really well how the oil content and terpene content ranks when you have got different alpha acid production. I'm sure that Ryan is right and that there's going to be some differences, but that's not something I'm up on.
And all the big breweries have hammered it in everyone's head that beer should be the same every time. when the wine industry gets away with, oh, this is this year's vintage or that year's vintage.
That's an excellent point.
They tie it more to the agriculture than in beer, so they have an advantage in wine.
They use it for their excuses. Excuse as to why they're consistent.
It was better last year.
Have I insulted all the wine people enough yet? I think that was an excellent question, Ryan. Thank you for listening live.
Yeah, thank you.
Asking the question.
Yep, especially reminding us that sauce is not just for bittering. You have to remind people like me who mainly think of it as a bittering hop. Very good. All right. Let's see. Mike writes in, Jamil and John, what is your preferred method and procedure for harvesting yeast from a carboy? I'm keeping the question short to keep things moving. Thanks, guys. So Jamil, you want to answer this from the John perspective first?
It's only 12 and a quarter years. Keeping those things moving. Keeping those things moving. Yeah, so my procedure, I still love carboys. My procedure is I will just snap myself off fresh piece. If I don't have a nice fresh piece of tubing, I'll put that in, and I'll start up with like a sanitized turkey baster, and I'll run that into casks. Now is all I do, or you put into your keg, whatever, and then I'll try and get the majority of beer out there, but I don't want to carry a lot of yeast from the bottom, so I just keep my tubing. One of the reasons I like the carboys, I can see where the tubing is. I go down the side of the glass down towards the bottom. You can tilt it a little bit, but I always leave enough beer in there. I mean, I'm getting the majority of beer, but I brew so that I have 5.5 gallons in the fermenter, so that when I rack, I get 5 gallons back out, and I can leave a half a gallon in there. Although now that I'm doing casks, I need 5.4 gallons in the cask. Anyways, so once that, I'll just rock it and break up the yeast cake with the beer that's in there. If you want to take more beer out, you can just put some sterile water in. When you're pressure cooking your mason jars of wort, you can do a few of water as well. Just, some filtered water, and do that. And then you can pour one of those in there if for some reason there's not enough liquid, but it'll break it up. And then I just, of course, I've cleaned the mouth of the thing. I clean my area. I open up a sterilized Nalgene bottle and just pour it into there. And if it takes multiples, it takes multiples. Usually 1 liter or a 2 liter will definitely take all the yeast and beer, and then put that in the fridge, and I'll clean it up later. But that's what I do. Not sure what Palmer always did. I don't think he did.
Forget about it for about 6 months, get a new pitch, start over.
Yeah, I don't think he did a whole lot of repitching and all that. But yeah, that was always my favorite move. And then I would, later on rinse the beer and the yeast, get rid of all the, yeast hulls and stuff like that, and clean it up. And there you go.
So John gave us a really good piece of info on a show. I don't know if you made that show or not. And John, you can throw it out there or not based on the water, et cetera, we're using to rinse. The thing you pointed out that I hadn't been thinking about, don't think I've been doing. I have a RODI system at my house. That is not good water for yeast. That can damage your yeast. So you said use spring water. That's a great water to use. Maybe you have to boil it beforehand or whatever. But if you're like me and RO is great, but RODI is better, that's not healthy for the yeast. Don't rinse it with that. The pressure on the cells is too great, because that is water looking to pick things up. because it has nothing in it.
Yeah, exactly. It depends. I mean, if you've got uh yeast cake in the bottom of a fermenter, um, I'd say chances are there's still a decent amount of beer in there. And so this is not quite as egregious as doing like a dilution with the water.
Mhm.
But yeah, I mean, it's still, well, you probably don't want to add any salt if you're going to be repitching this yeast. But I mean, you could certainly just have I'd say just make sure you're leaving enough beer in there so that, if you're like 25% beer and 75% water, and even that's DI water, you're probably still in decent shape.
Okay. If you don't pack it down, drain everything off, end up with nothing but jelly, and maybe throw on top of that some RDI. Okay. Good
Yeah.
stuff.
The yeast are, I mean, they're more delicate than you think, and they're more durable than you think. I mean, the fact that yeast are everywhere, and all over the place.
If a bunch of drunken brewers hadn't killed it off in the last couple hundred centuries,
they're pretty tough.
Very cool. Now, Huggy, I guess it's been so. Jamil went back to home brewing. You did home. Okay, so last time you were home brewing heavy was about 6 years ago. Were you repitching at that point in time when you were doing all those garage batches, getting your recipes straight for the new brewery?
Oh, no, I was just, the last time I used carboys, no, just one and done. I was trying to think of that. I don't think I ever repitched when I had carboys.
Well, now,
if you got a.
Back when this question was asked, there were only carboys.
but Huggy was a pro when this question was asked. Huggy, I think, was brewing at No Label at this point in time. 613?
Yeah, we had that. Yeah, we had that Blickman with the with the fermenter. So yeah, if you have something like that with a conical and a port and all that, you can pull the yeast off. That's a lot easier. But yeah, it sounds like Jamil. It sounds like that's the way. That's what I would do it.
All right. All right, let's go ahead and take a break, and we'll be right back with some more questions.
Brew right. Brew smart. Brew strong.
This is Brew Strong.
All right, we're back. We're back in the sack. We are answering all the questions that you guys have ever written to us sooner or later. Working on the sooner part. All right, so Josh, who has an interesting nickname, asks, what's the best way to grow mead or wine yeast from a small test tube size for pitching in mead? I use Y yeast smack packs because that's what my local homebrew store carries. For beer yeast, I usually split the packs into a few test tubes and then grow up yeast up in flasks of DME where around 1040. Step it up in volumes 100 ml, 500 ml to 5 liters. This is what he does for beer, but he's asking about mead. Does mead or wine yeast need to be treated differently? I currently have test tubes of 4184 sweet mead and 4783 Rudesheimer. I don't do mead, sorry. And would like to propagate them up to 20-liter batch size amounts. Cheers, Josh. Jamil, have you done mead? You probably have done mead.
Yeah, I've done mead. Hey, I won awards in mead. Come on.
There you go. I'm not surprised.
First place in every category.
Of course. Nice.
Growing the thing about those yeast is they can grow on simple sugars. Wine being mainly fructose, I believe.
Yeah.
And then, so it doesn't have to have maltose in there, but most of those yeasts will still ferment maltose, won't they, John?
Probably, maybe not as, I mean,
Efficiently as
not as efficiently.
some beer
Um,
yeast.
yeah, I mean, my thought on this is just like use apple juice, right? Something that's going to
Right.
be pretty cheap, probably cheaper than DME.
Yep.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, I'd say no need to use something that's more expensive and more trouble than uh
Yeah, you can
just
get pasteurized apple juice and use that. I think you want to avoid the apple juice that has preservatives in it, but you'd be surprised at how well yeast will ferment something with preservatives in it. I didn't think it would. Back in the day, I didn't think it would, but it does. Where was I? Where they were fermenting Mountain Dew. I mean, straight Mountain Dew.
No.
I think it was in Idaho. I think it was in Boise. I forget. I don't know. How terrible memory. But it'll you pitch enough, it'll overcome what the preservatives are in there a lot of times. But ideally, like John's saying, apple juice is reasonably priced, and you should be able to even grow it up with dextrose, right?
yeah, I think so.
That's just straight on glucose.
Yeah. If you do that, there are two things, and even with the apple juice, you probably want to think about supplementing with nitrogen.
Nutrients, yeah.
But with if you're just doing a dextrose wash with water, you're also going to want to have something in there that will, because there's no buffering power, pH buffering power. And so you can get some baking soda. You can get if you want to get like pure sodium hydroxide, that's possible. You just got to be really careful with that. But
so is that when you said nitrogen, you're talking about FAM, is that just diammonium phosphate in small amounts, or is it something more specialized than diammonium phosphate?
Yeah, no, just diammonium phosphate would be fine.
DAP will work.
Yeah,
don't go crazy with it. But yeah,
homebrewers never go crazy with anything.
And some baking soda will do it. People that are doing like high gravity seltzers, they'll use some yeast nutrients. There's more expensive ones that work well for that sort of thing. But DAP will work, and it's cheap. And same thing for baking soda. Just something to buffer it.
Gotcha. Something to stabilize it. Very cool. I thought that might be a little bit of a wrinkle in our current process, but I thought it'd be good to point out that there are tweaks to everything we talk about that work for more than just brewing beer.
All right. Ask your questions. You can email your questions in. Brew Strong at thebrewingnetwork.com. And then Travis has promised he will make sure all your questions are answered. And if you're sending in a question now, we prioritize the ones that are recent, and then we fill the rest of the show with the ones from the past that we're trying to get done.
And the only thing that beats out the latest questions are questions in the chat.
Yes.
Yeah, they're top
James
priority.
is listening. James could ask a question.
We answered a handful of his more recently on the plating and so forth, last show and stuff. He had to miss it, I think, but we answered it offline. All right. Marshall writes, "My friends, I have had great success harvesting yeast from starters and using multiple generations, up to 12 so far, with no noticeable changes. Care to comment on this method? Any guesses as to how many cells are actually being harvested? Using pitch rate calculators, I predicted about 100 million cells. but the resulting cake appears to me to be larger than what's in a White Lab's vial. And subsequent starters always seem to start faster and ferment with more vigor. Okay, so
I agree. As far as start faster and ferment with more vigor, because nothing against White Labs. You know how I love White Labs. So all the yeast producers, because they make such a critical component for beer, great beer. But something that had to be packaged, QC, the whole thing, and then shipped to another vendor, and then put in the fridge, and then it's suffering a little bit along the way. Doesn't mean it's bad. It just means it's going to take a little bit to kind of recover, and be healthy so you can ferment. So, when you do the starters and when you do the repitching and things like that, they tend to be, really great ferments, and it's what you want. So,
am I reading this right? Is he making a starter and then reserving some yeast to make new starters with?
It sounds like that. Maybe not.
So
he's harvested from starters, multiple generations. Usually when you're talking about generations, like at Heretic, you would harvest from a fermentation and then repitch it. And we would go, I think we reached 20 at some point, but generally I think when did we kill it off, John? Like 10 to 15, and we get a new pitch.
Yeah, lager we'd cut off, I think, at about 10 hard, and then ales we could go up to 15 to maybe 20, depends.
Yeah. But you can make great beer, and I like the way the fermentation tastes with something that you're reusing over and over. Of course, we were repitching every few days or every week or something like that. So it wasn't sitting around a long time. That's the only problem. There's two problems with homebrewers repitching yeast. One is introducing some sort of contamination. The other is letting it sit way too long before you brew that next beer. Mm-hmm. That's really the only two problems with it. Maybe there's something else, but those are the two issues you got to deal with. But if you can overcome those issues, you can make great beer with it. It's, I think it turns out a little bit better and save you a ton of money. So
with the lab, with John running the lab and y'all's knowledge and experience with the yeast, would you plate and restart, or would you buy a new pitch?
We buy new pitches.
Yeah, I know you had your 15 barrels in the back. You could brew a 15 barrel and grow it up into your 120s.
The thing is, what you pay for ingredients, what you pay for labor, what you pay for in tying up equipment. I know it seems really expensive when you buy yeast from the yeast companies, but it's not. It really isn't.
Now when you spread it across 10, 15 batches.
Well, and especially if you're repitching.
Yeah.
We were paying nothing for yeast, because it was, let's say, 10 generations, but from each generation, we probably pitched, multiple other fermenters from that. You could get at least one, 2 or 3 pitches from one fermenter. And then you can carry that out another, 10 times. You're brewing hundreds of batches with a pitch yeast. So I was always, let's just, put this on the yeast companies to worry about propagating. Yeah, when we had something special, I'm sure we propped it up, but otherwise it's like, let's just buy a new pitch. The smallest I think we would go would be something like a 30 barrel pitch. And then we'd, prop up from there. Mm-hmm. sometimes we buy a 60 barrel pitch, really expensive, but again, the value's there, and doing it yourself, home brewing, yes. Commercial brewing, where you need to pay people for their time. Yeah.
So you said something on there. And again, when I read this question, I feel like Marshall is making a starter, pulling some of it aside for future starters. And one of the things you said a few minutes ago is that, well, if you're not going to plate that sample you pulled out, then you're just going to have yeast aging in your refrigerator. So you have to grow it up some kind of way later on after it's gotten a little bit old, probably. So, for me, I do a specific, I buy a pack. I brew 5 beers off that pack, or 2 packs, whatever it takes to get my first one straight, to grow it up, re-pitch 4 times. Had I sampled it, I've now got 8 to 12 week old samples sitting in my refrigerator that are going to grow up again. I didn't plate it. I didn't do anything but leave it sitting in my refrigerator for 8 to 12 weeks.
As long as there's no contamination, I don't think it's that much of a problem. Refrigerated.
So understand how much has died off and regrow it the proper way.
Yeah, you can kind of give it a rinse with some sterile water, and then go from there. I would just add wort to it and sit in there in the fridge, and you'll see the yeast take off, and it'll be in suspension in the wort in your container. That's why I like translucent containers or clear containers. And once you see that, there'll be, dead stuff at the bottom. You can decant that off into another sterile container and leave that stuff behind. And then you're working with fresh, active yeast.
Huggy, are you able to repitch it?
If you want the commercial side of it, John can tell you everything he did.
Yeah, we would go up to, one time we got up to 20 some generations, and we said, oh, we need to get a new pitch. Let's do that. So then we got a new pitch, and then we tried the beers side by side, and we're like, oh yeah, that tastes a little bit different than with the fresh pitch. So, but we definitely got, I think from then on we limited to like a dozen or so generations. Just because we had that flavor drift over time, and because you're trying the beer, you're trying each batch back to back. We didn't at the time, we didn't have flavor standards and profiles and stuff like that, so it just kind of drifted, and we didn't notice it because you're drinking it every day, but then it's changing as you're drinking it, so you kind of get used to it every batch. So that's something that we had to worry about. But like I said, we just limited to a dozen or so.
Not at your current brewery, that was a previous brewery.
Yeah, first brewery actually.
Yeah, so
we did a lot of repitching there.
You do I hate to say a relatively smaller batch at your current brewery, but you do quite a diverse. You brew all kinds of styles. You're trying to cross the palate for anyone who wants to come and visit, and you share your recipes with other breweries because how your system's set up. Your flicks, you have your recipes, and you've got the ones that your people want and the ones you work on, but you also brew other people's recipes, etc. So you're going all over the place. Are you still? Is there any repitching available, or are you just different style every time, and it's not going to work out?
Yeah, like some of the other locations are a lot busier, and so they're brewing. We have 4 core beers, and so they're brewing those cores a lot more often. So they're able to repitch a lot more often, and so for them, they get to save some money on the repitching. And I try to repitch as I can. Like I said, I did the Bach. We pitched that off the Oktoberfest.
Mm-hmm.
We just pitched a Belgian yeast. I'm going to do a triple off of that next week, or in 2 weeks. Yeah, next week. So I'm trying to at least get a generation or two just to save a little money, and then we'll do props as well. Like I said, we'll prop a 1 barrel into a 7 barrel.
Mm-hmm.
Prop it up to save some money there, get a smaller pitch size. Though some of the bigger yeast suppliers now are saying if you buy a pitch size smaller than your brew house size, they're going to charge a surcharge for that because they don't want people to prop it on their own.
How can they do that? That's ridiculous. Tell him to F off. It's like, no way. I'll grow my own yeast then, you bastards.
That's the whole
We're
point,
looking
right?
at some options.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
So, John, you were sneezing. Do you have any comments that you're not sneezing?
Massive allergy attack.
Yeah, I don't know what happened there. God, what were we talking about?
Repitch, pulling off early, saving some aside, not into plating it, but holding on to it, but also how far you can go before. I mean, you gave us the tell that you were about 10 pitches on the lager yeast, about 15 on an ale. You didn't give us the why though. Like, were you seeing mutants? Were you seeing off flavors?
Yeah, I think it was definitely some flavors with the lager side of things. But it was also just like a time of fermentation. Some of the later generations would take longer, and I don't know if that
Whoa.
was because we were I mean, I guess it's possible we were selecting some of the earlier flocculators and just sort of allowing that to keep drifting, but yeah.
Yeah, the interesting thing is if you brew the same beer over and over, and if you measure the specific gravity and the pH every day, same time, the next time you brew that beer, it should do exactly the same thing. If you haven't changed any of the other of your process or ingredients, it'll be exactly the same every day. And if you track that and it starts to show up differently, like, nah, it's a day slower in fermenting, or, the pH is not dropping as rapidly as it did before, that tells you there's a problem with your pitch, with your fermentation. And, generally it's the yeast. If your temperature is the same, everything else the same, that's when you start a new pitch, or, you can anticipate, but that's hard data that'll tell you, no, this is not turning out the same beer that it was before. So once you get a beer that, you really like and everything's great on it, if you've tracked these data points, that's a great way to tell in the future what you might do.
When you were doing this, were you pulling samples and checking pH, or did you have an in situ pH meter?
I had employees that I made take samples every day.
I didn't mean you. I meant the heretic you, not the Jamil you.
The royal we.
The royal we.
The royal you.
Yeah, I never really liked the in tank things because I mean, maybe they're better today. I just worry about contamination and things like that.
Something else to clean, inkling well. Yeah.
Question in the chat from James. He says, my process is pretty consistent. In a recent batch, I made a slight mistake in concentration and ended up adding oxygen that put me over 18 parts per million for a batch of alt that had an original gravity of 1049. With the mash profile I was using, I would generally expect this to finish around 1011 to 1010, about 77% apparent fermentation. This one seems to be petering out at around 1016, only 66%. I'm guessing that the excess oxygen caused this, but I want to see if that checks out with you guys. I also use the open fermentation method Jamil mentioned in his BYO article, modified a bit for my conical fermenter. That seems to work as planned, so I don't think that would be the cause. And in fact, I thought it might actually give me a bit more of extra attenuation. I generally target 9 to 10 ppm for oxygen. The BYO article was about alt beers and Sticka alt and all that. The thing is that they all do open fermentation. They have open fermenters there. And it does help with the flavor and all that. The generally, so back in the day when like British brewers were doing double drop and all that stuff, the whole reason was to agitate the yeast, get more oxygen in there, and help it attenuate, because they didn't have, all the stuff that we do today. So it was difficult to get the yeast to fully, ferment dry beer. So that's why they did that. So the addition to 18 parts per million, which you can get, people are like, oh no, the saturation point of, wort is whatever it is. And you can't go past that. Well, you can super saturate a liquid, and it takes quite a while for it to off gas. It'll stay in there for a long time. It's easier to saturate a liquid with oxygen than it is to deoxygenate a liquid. But 18 parts per million is not that crazy. Yeah, I suppose he uses pure O2, but don't think that was the issue. You'll get a longer lag time because the yeast are, they're like, yeah, oxygen, lots of free oxygen. But it shouldn't harm the yeast. I mean, if you kept them in a high oxygen environment for a long time, maybe, I don't know, maybe John knows more on that, but that should not have been the problem. You get a longer lag, but I think you would get as much attenuation or perhaps more through this, like James is predicting. What are you going to say, John?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, 18 ppm is not something that I would have been super concerned about. It's yes, if you really add in a ton, or if you just got let it sitting in that for a long time, the oxidative stress on the yeast can be bad. But I would honestly look more towards the hot side on this one. I just think it's something it's always really easy the thing that you notice to blame that, right? It's like
a good point. Yeah.
If it's, because usually it's like, okay, well, what changed? This is what I noticed that changed, so this is probably what caused it. But there could have been all kinds of stuff. Maybe temperature was off on the mash. Maybe you mashed way too high. I don't know. So I don't think that having 18 ppm of oxygen would have caused that serious change in attenuation.
If you have extra lag, would you also have a longer fermentation time? Would there be a correlation there as well? Could it extend out the fermentation time then?
Yes.
So maybe he just needs to get a little more time to finish out.
Could be.
Right.
Did James talk about timeline on his question? How?
Well, he's listening in the chat. James, did you?
He's going to check his thermometer and his mash temp. He's responding to. Yeah. Also that, and
we should figure out a way to bring these folks in
on video
to discuss.
Bring him in live. Like, hey, send him a link.
Cool.
Like, join us.
Right.
Yeah, have a chat. Come on in for about
kick
a
them
minute
out when we're done with them.
Yeah,
once we've used them for our needs, we could come back out. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
That'd be fun.
I was wondering if his malt supplier, I mean, I don't know if he's buying by the sack and he knows his malt supply and he was checking his assays on the malt, et cetera. But I mean, how high would your ppm have to be to truly affect your final gravity?
I mean, it would have to be high enough really to just
kill yeast.
Right. It'd have to be really high. And it probably need to be pure oxygen for a certain amount of time.
Yeah.
I don't think that would do it. I mean, even with people, you could be on 100% oxygen for quite a while before it becomes toxic. He says the gravity hasn't changed in 2 days, so he's thinking it's done. Yeah, I don't think you're gonna. If you're at 16 and it's not changing, I don't think you're gonna get it down to 10 or 11.
Any chance that you're using something like a pill or a tilt, and maybe it's a couple off, and you get a better measurement when you pull a sample? It happens to me all the time.
That's a good point. It could be also just temperature. Maybe there was a cold spell, and the yeast started to drop a little early, or the ingredients you're using, maybe certain malts that were less fermentable.
Have you known alt year yeast to be more alt beer yeast to be more temperature sensitive than maybe typical yeast?
So same.
Okay. All right.
Essentially use a lager yeast, but they use it in open fermentation and warmer temperatures than lager. So yeah, I
Great
think
question, James.
so. Yeah, it has us a little bit perplexed without seeing everything and tasting the beer and all that. It's hard to know for sure, but we don't think it's the oxygen. We think that should not have caused a lower attenuation. The most important thing is, how does it taste?
I was thinking that when you said we hadn't tasted it yet.
If it tastes good, well, then it's fine. And have you brewed the exact same? He's using the Dusseldorf yeast from White Labs. If he's has he brewed this before? Because he says he anticipated, based on the information, 10 to 11, but that doesn't mean he brewed it before and it turned out 10 to 11. So
is that by any chance the alt yeast you use, Jamil?
I've used that yeast. I forget what I used the last time I brewed alt beer. So, well, there you go.
But no, Jamil, he knew somebody, gave him a pitch. That's just how he's a rock star.
I never got free yeast.
I didn't say free.
That's the weird thing. Why was I not getting some free yeast?
So yeah, my award-winning brown ale, the first time I brewed it, was yeast you gave me when I visited you at Heretic in 2014.
There you go. Good pitch of yeast.
It was a great pitch of yeast, yeah. All right. Final break, and I think it's time to just wrap it up after the break, though. Going a little bit long. We've had some two great questions in the chat. Love having the chat questions. We'll be right back.
Thanks, John.
All right, we're back just in time to say goodbye, everybody. Always visit our sponsors, Lichtman, sponsor forever, and I hope it stays that way. Great products. I had a hard time believing anyone listening hasn't tried any of their products. If you haven't, you should try them. And all the other sponsors that have been around, keeping Brewing Network and Brew Strong here free for you. We'll be back probably in about 5 weeks, I think, because I've got some stuff I have to do, unfortunately, in the meantime, before I can do another one of these shows. But we'll have some great content. And by any chance, Jamil gets, just like a hair up his ass and decides, damn it, screw Travis, I'm gonna have another show out. It'll be better than ever because he won't be on it again. So we'll be here. One way or another, we'll be here for you guys. Send us your questions and tune in. Brew Strong, everybody.
Brew Strong.
Brew Strong.
Brew Strong.